Before we begin, I want you to remember one thing. This message will not find you twice. You found it because a part of you is ready to stop living by the memories of yesterday, ready to stop recycling the same emotions that limit your future, and ready to step into a version of yourself you haven't met yet, but have always felt calling you. And if you let this moment pass, you'll drift back into the familiar patterns of your old self. So for the next few minutes, listen not with your mind, but with your awareness. Because right now, you are standing at the doorway of a completely different life. Most people wake up each morning and immediately step into the echoes of yesterday. Before their feet even touch the floor, their brain is already firing the same patterns, searching for the same problems, recalling the same worries, and recreating the same identity they wore the day before. And without even realizing it, they begin the day not as a creator, but as a predictable expression of their past. They think the same thoughts, which trigger the same emotions, and those emotions drive the same choices and behaviors that lead to the same experiences that reinforce the original thoughts. And the cycle continues, day after day, year after year, a life on repeat. What people don't understand is that their thoughts are not just passing ideas, they are signals. Every thought fires a cascade of neurological chemistry that the body interprets as reality. So, if your thoughts are anchored in memories of lack, fear, frustration, or limitation, your body wakes up to a future that looks exactly like your past. You literally prime your brain to expect the familiar, and the familiar keeps you unconscious. That's why change feels difficult, because you're not just trying to think differently, you're interrupting a biological pattern that has kept you in survival for years. But the moment you begin to observe this, something powerful happens. You've stepped out of the program, you've become aware of your automatic self, and awareness is the first step toward liberation. When you can pause and witness the thought that wants to drag you back into an old emotional state, you've created a gap. And in that gap, you have a choice to think something different, feel something different, and signal a different future into existence. This is where real transformation begins. Not by forcing change, not by trying to escape your past, but by becoming conscious of who you are being. When you recognize that your old thoughts no longer belong in the future you're creating, you stop accepting them as truth. And when you no longer surrender to them, you break the loop. Every time you rise above the familiar, your brain begins rewiring itself to support a new state of being. You're no longer the person who wakes up and relives yesterday. You're the person who wakes up and chooses tomorrow. This is the moment where the future starts to open. Most people never realize that the greatest prison they will ever live in isn't built of walls or circumstances. It's built of emotions they've rehearsed for so long that their body has become chemically addicted to them. The frustration they feel every morning, the resentment they carry into their relationships, the worry that loops in their mind like background noise, these emotions have become so familiar that even when life gives them an opportunity to feel something new, the body pulls them right back to what it knows. Not because it's good, not because it's empowering, but because it's familiar. Your body has been bathing in the same emotional chemicals day after day. And just like any addiction, the body begins to crave what it's used to. So when you try to step into a new future, when you attempt to feel abundant or grateful or inspired, your body interrupts the process and says, no, 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 this isn't who we are. Let's go back to the old emotions. And suddenly, without even noticing, you're thinking the same thoughts that match those emotions, because the body is reminding the mind of who it believes you've always been. This is why so many people feel stuck. They believe they're victims of their circumstances, but it's their internal chemistry that's keeping them looping in the same experiences. They're not addicted to the situation, they're addicted to the emotional reaction it gives them. And the moment they try to break free, their body protests, pulling them back into the familiar feelings of stress, guilt, or unworthiness. The body doesn't care whether those emotions destroy your future, it only cares about maintaining what it knows. But here's the truth. The moment you realize your emotions are not facts, they're just programmed responses, you begin to claim your power back. When you catch yourself reaching for a familiar emotional state and you decide, consciously, not to surrender to it, something remarkable happens. You break the conditioning. You teach the body that it no longer gets to run the show. And with every interruption of that emotional pattern, you loosen its grip. You interrupt the addiction. You free yourself from the identity tied to those feelings. And the moment you stop being defined by the emotions of your past, you create the space to step into the energy of your future. There is a version of you that already exists in the field of possibilities, a version that has healed, a version that is abundant, a version that lives with clarity, intention, and purpose. Most people think their future is something they eventually walk into, something that appears when circumstances finally line up. But your future isn't waiting for conditions to change. It's waiting for you to change because the moment your internal state shifts, you begin to interact with a completely different level of reality. Think of the future as a vibrational signature. Every possibility has an energetic frequency, whether that's the energy of success, love, health, or freedom. And your current emotional state determines which of those possibilities you can actually align with. If you're waking up every day anchored in the same emotions from your past, you are tuning your body and brain to a predictable future. But the moment you shift your internal state, when you begin to feel the emotions of your desired future before it arrives, you're no longer living by cause and effect. You're mastering the ability to cause and effect. Most people wait for something in their external world to give them permission to feel elevated emotions. They wait for the promotion to feel successful, the relationship to feel loved, the healing to feel whole. But waiting is the language of the old self. Creation is the language of the new. When you close your eyes and begin to feel the feelings of the future you desire as if it's already happening, you signal your body to believe that the event has already occurred. And because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between an internal experience and an external one, it begins reorganizing its biology to match that imaginary future. This is where true transformation begins. You're no longer the person who reacts to life, you become the person who influences life. You tap into the field of possibilities, and instead of hoping for the future, you become equal to it. Your thoughts and emotions start behaving as if the future is already real, and when your internal world is aligned with that level of certainty, life begins to respond. Synchronicities appear, opportunities show up, and experiences unfold that seem almost supernatural because you've matched the frequency of a future that was always available to you. And when you finally become the energy of the future you want, that future has no choice but to find you. The heart is one of the most powerful tools you possess, yet most people live their entire lives without ever accessing its true intelligence. When you're living in stress, in survival, in the emotions that have been conditioned into you for years, the heart closes down. It becomes guarded, rigid, protective, and in that state, it's almost impossible to create anything new, because a closed heart can only recreate the past. The future requires openness. It requires coherence. It requires a state of being where your thoughts and emotions are no longer working against each other, but supporting the same intention. The moment you enter elevated emotions, gratitude, love, compassion, inspiration, you activate the heart in a way that changes everything. These emotions are not soft or sentimental, they are powerful frequencies that reorganize your entire internal state. When the heart begins to open, it creates a magnetic field that expands far beyond your physical body. And that field is not just energetic, it is informational. It carries the signal of your future. It communicates with the quantum field. It tells your brain, your body, and the world around you that you are no longer the person who has been defined by past experiences. You are someone new. When the heart and brain begin to synchronize, something remarkable happens. The brain becomes more orderly, your thoughts become clearer, your body becomes more regulated. The survival chemistry that once kept you reactive starts to quiet down, and in that state of coherence, you step into the realm of possibility. You're no longer broadcasting the energy of fear, lack, or separation. Instead, you're broadcasting the frequency of the future you're creating. This is why elevated emotions matter. You can think all the positive thoughts you want, but if your heart isn't open, if you're not feeling the emotions of your future, your body won't believe a word your mind is saying. The heart is the amplifier. It is the signal that sends your intention into the field. And when you feel the emotion of your future before it happens, you collapse time. You draw that future toward you because you've already become the person who belongs to it. When your heart opens and your inner state aligns with possibility, you're no longer hoping for your future, you're embodying it. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for something outside of them to change before they give themselves permission to feel different on the inside. They wait for success to feel empowered, for love to feel worthy, for healing to feel whole, for opportunities to feel hopeful. But that approach keeps them tied to the old model of reality, where the environment dictates their internal state, and their emotions are nothing more than reactions to what's already happened. As long as you're waiting for external conditions to shift, you're living as an effect of the world rather than a creator within it. The environment is never the cause of transformation. It is the result of who you're being. When you begin to embody a new internal state, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions start reflecting the future you want rather than the past you've lived, you send a signal into the field that the world around you cannot ignore. You've moved out of the predictable patterns of survival and stepped into the energy of creation. And the moment you sustain that energy, the environment starts to reorganize itself to match your new level of being. People show up, opportunities align, circumstances shift in ways you could never plan with your analytical mind. You're not begging the world to change. You've become the person who belongs in a new world. And that's the difference. When you're living in elevated emotions, gratitude, joy, worthiness, love, you're no longer looking for something outside to make you feel complete. You're generating wholeness from within. And when your internal state becomes greater than your external circumstances, you free yourself from the conditions that used to control your life. This is where real magic begins, because now you don't need the environment to confirm anything for you. You don't need proof, you don't need guarantees, you feel the future as if it's already unfolding. And because you're no longer reacting to the same old triggers, you break the cycle that once kept you limited. Your internal world leads, and the external world follows. This is how you transcend the old self. Not through force, not through willpower, but through alignment. When you stop waiting for the world to change and instead become the change, the world has no choice but to reflect who you've decided to be. There is a brief moment, sometimes only a few seconds, when you become aware of your old self, trying to pull you back into familiar thoughts, familiar emotions, familiar reactions. Most people don't recognize how important that moment is. They feel the old frustration rising, the old doubt resurfacing, the old habit trying to take over, and without hesitation, they surrender to it because it feels normal. They don't realize that this is the crossroads where transformation is either made or lost. Awareness doesn't stay open for long, it's a window. And if you don't make a new choice in the exact moment you notice the old pattern, the body will take over and you'll fall right back into the identity you're trying to outgrow. The body wants to return to what is familiar. So when you try to think differently, feel differently, act differently, it resists. It whispers the same doubts, it produces the same emotions, and it convinces you that the old ways are safer. But that resistance is not a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're changing. The old self is losing control, and it's trying one last time to survive. That moment is not meant to be avoided, it's meant to be used. If you can stay conscious when the old self rises and you choose not to respond the way you used to, you break the cycle right there. That is the moment you build a new neural connection. That is the moment you teach your body that you're no longer living in the past. That is the moment you choose your future over your conditioning. And even if the shift feels small, choosing calm instead of anger, choosing presence instead of worry, choosing gratitude instead of fear, it is those small moments of mastery that rewire your entire destiny. You're signaling to the field that you are no longer the same person who created your old life. Transformation doesn't happen in grand gestures. It happens in these micro moments when you override the autopilot of your past. If you can catch yourself in the act of being your old self and choose differently, you interrupt the momentum of years of unconscious behavior. Each new choice becomes a vote for the future you're stepping into. Each moment of awareness becomes evidence that you're no longer defined by who you were, but by who you're becoming. This is where the old story ends and the new one begins.